we had this idea, we're like, well, what if we go and start talking to local high schools about the dangers of drinking and driving during prom and graduation season. We've spoken to almost 50,000 high school students in the last 10 years, and there hasn't been one fatality in prom or graduation in any of the schools that we've gone to in the last 10 years.
Welcome to the Tip the Scales podcast, where we discuss running and growing your law firm. I'm your host, Maria Monroy, president and co-founder of LawRank. Today, I am live with Ed Ciarimboli. We discussed buying law firms, being a trial firm that does billboards. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Hi, Ed.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure to be here.
I appreciate it. So tell us your name, title, and then your law firm.
So my name is Ed Ciarimboli. My law firm is Fellerman and Ciarimboli. We're in Pennsylvania. We have offices in Philadelphia, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Honesdale, Berwick, and we share some space with a good friend of ours out in Pittsburgh. So we pretty much cover the whole state of Pennsylvania.
When you say Scranton, all I can think of is the office. That's it. Nothing else. Now that's all I can think about.
No, so funny story. So our office, literally our office in Scranton, which is now on Joe Biden Street or Lane or whatever it is.
Really?
Yeah, it's right across from the courthouse. And where they would shoot the office, when they would pan in and around the city, it was before it was our office, but that they used to show that on the opening and the closing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's the old our office is the old clerk of court, so it's very historic and it's a really neat old building. And before that, it was a bank, so the vault is actually still there. So it's pretty neat space in downtown Scranton. But yes, everybody
thinks of that.
Everybody thinks of the office.
Yeah. So tell me, how big is your firm and what is the structure of your firm? Are you guys just pre-lit? You go all the way to trial? What's that like?
So it's myself and my partner. We're the owners. And we started off, it was just, 20 years ago, myself and my partner, Greg. And we had a part-time paralegal who occasionally would come into the office very angry and intoxicated. So that didn't last very long. And then we had a part-time bookkeeper that was my partner's ex-mother-in-law that used to just shove our bills in a drawer. And so that didn't work out so well either. From that, we've grown the firm to right now we have 15 lawyers, all areas of personal injury, from workers' compensation to tractor-trailer cases, medical malpractice, products liability. 99% of the work that we do is litigation based. We have a support staff of about 50.
Wow.
Yeah, every now and then I walk around and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of people here.
Yeah. Especially from that beginning where you doesn't sound like it started off so great.
It was interesting. So my partner and I, we met bartending together.
Before law school, after law school?
Before law school, it was myself,
wow.
My partner, and his ex-wife at the time. We were all bartenders behind the same 3 feet of marble, slinging gin. And, Greg is about 8 years older than me, and he was going to be going to law school. I was still in college at the time. But we'd always talked about, if I went to law school and then we would, someday practice together. He came out, he did about 6 years in the DA's office. I did 3 years with a local personal injury firm. And then we started out together. And
I love that.
Yeah. So we still kind of have the same philosophy, which is everything is split equally. We just have a bigger tip jar. And
I'm a big fan of partnerships.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're great.
Best partner I've ever had in the almost 21 years. We've never once had a disagreement about money. I certainly look out for him and his family, and he does the same for me and my family. And we've had certainly disagreements over various things, but never money, which is really unique especially in our business. He doesn't handle any litigation anymore. He primarily focuses on kind of running the business aspect of it.
And you focus more on the litigation.
I do
part?
all litigation. So
I think that's the perfect way to do it if you're going to be a trial firm.
Oh, there's no question. And we're a little different than a lot of firms. So about 15 years ago, for about the first 4 or 5 years, it was just, it was a struggle and a grind. And, we were building the firm and, we started to get really good results. And then we started to, amass more cases. And our philosophy was, well, we'll just work harder. Keep working harder, we'll make more money. Keep working harder, we'll make more money. And then all of a sudden, we were working a lot harder and not making more money, in fact, making less money. So we made a decision at that point, like we have got to do something different to figure this out because we were growing and it was just not a sustainable model at that point. Like the growth was outpacing, everything. I mean, we were just getting busier and busier and busier and making less money. So we hired a CFO. His name's Joe Shentz, and that was 15 years ago. And, Greg and I always said we're pretty good lawyers, but we were terrible, terrible businessmen. I mean, just terrible.
Where did you find him?
At the gym.
No.
Swear to God.
You see, guys, there's another benefit to going to the gym.
No question about it.
That's amazing. How did you know he was going to be good, though?
We didn't.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the reality was we didn't know he was going to be good. And I don't think he realized that he would be with us as long as he was. I think he thought it would be kind of a really short-term thing. And then he would move on to his next consulting gig. And it's been, 15 years. And we run our law firm like a business.
Which you should. It is a business.
Absolutely. We have marketing budgets and you have projections and we have audits and, there's process in place. And the thing that I think makes us really work well is, myself and Greg are the partners, but Joe is like a third partner, but, not an equity partner. He handles all the financial aspects of running our firm.
And is he incentivized in any?
Yeah. He's got, whenever expenses are cut, Joe will, do well. And, ultimately the more money that he's able to put in myself and Greg's pocket and then, make the firm more financially stable, make our balance sheet better, Joe makes more money as well.
I love that.
Yeah. So he's fantastic, but, we stay out of his lane.
In Pennsylvania, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one of the tougher states in terms of PI, right? In terms of the laws being not as favorable, or is that not true?
I would say yes and no to that, which is a typical lawyer answer.
It depends.
We have no caps, which is fantastic. We have very good wrongful death and survival law. The workers' compensation system isn't perfect, but it's okay. There's no pain and suffering or non-economic damages in workers' comp, but it's a fairly good system to compensate injured workers. The thing that is the biggest challenge in Pennsylvania is when I walk into a courtroom, I can't ask for a number.
Oh.
Right. So
you're giving zero guidance. That's
zero.
Sucks.
So we have to work very hard. And this is where, when we try a lot of cases, the science of being in a courtroom and trying to principles of anchoring, how do you weave in the damage story into the liability, which we know instinctively, if you have a good liability model, it will drive the damage model. So it's very challenging in that regard. Hopefully, before I'm done practicing, that will change. I think there's only 4 states in the whole country. It's Pennsylvania, Jersey, West Virginia, I think Utah, but Utah they're changing or already may have changed. So in that respect, it is a little bit challenging. But
do you know John Campbell?
I do. I've worked with John a lot.
Okay, so he's the one that explained.
Yeah,
I had him on a few months ago, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So we've worked with John a bunch, but we're actually working with John on a case right now where there's multiple plaintiffs that are involved, and the damages run from a decapitation death to people who weren't really physically injured at all in this particular crash. And it has been fascinating to see what people think about the damages, but and the reason I say this is because I can't, on the person who only has the psychological, the post-traumatic, when I say only, it's significant, but I can't walk in and say, that's worth as much as somebody who has the broken arm or the $1 million in medical bills or whatever it is. And so, we've been working on different models to try to balance those out. And John's done and his wife Alicia have done a fantastic job in doing that.
I could see where using John in your situation is actually more crucial because you can't give a number. The way that he was explaining it to me is usually he will use big data to say, okay, if we ask for 20 versus 45 versus 70 or whatever, right? What do we get?
Yep.
But in your case, it's like you need to understand how to present it, and you have to have an idea of what you're going to get to also know, should I settle? Should I not?
No question. And then we could test different anchors. So give you an example. And John worked on this case with us. This was a number of years ago. And the number that we really wanted to get was about $5 million. So like, all right, if we can't ask for $5 million, and there were no economics in the case. So we were walking into this case with zero boardable, no medical bills, no lost wages, nothing. So we're like, all right, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to weave in anchors that will get the jury thinking about $5 million? So one of the ways that we did it is we looked at, like, the trucking company drove 5 million miles a year. Right. So that was in opening. Trucking company drove 5 million miles a year. Their defense expert had made $5 million in the last, 3 or 5 years or whatever it was. So we just kept saying 5 million, 5 million, 5 million in different contexts. And that was the only number that people ever heard. Yeah, it was really cool because it was like, if this works, this is, it's really.
Did it work?
So the case settles, right? So when we tested it with John, it was like dead on. I mean, there were like, it was crazy, the number. It was like 90% of the people were at or near $5 million.
That's crazy.
It was wild, right? So we try the case and we try it for about 8 days. It ends up settling for a little bit more than $5 million, which was great. And the first time this has ever happened, I never talked to jurors afterwards because you never know what the hell they're going to say. My paralegal and I we met with the judge and we put it on the record, and then we're walking out of the courthouse in downtown Philly, and like 4 jurors come right up to us. And
so this settled during trial? During trial,
yeah, the 8th day of trial. And so we're talking to them, and they had a couple questions. We answered them, and we just said, "Yeah, I know we didn't get you didn't get to deliberate and award damages, but if you had, was there like a number in mind that you could think of that you would think would have been fair and reasonable for these folks?" And 2 out of the 4 said $5 million. Yeah, and then the other 2 said between 5 and 10.
Wow.
And it's like. It was really, really, really cool stuff. So yes, I know John well, work with him quite a bit. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, I found the stuff he does fascinating.
Oh yeah, I am a huge believer in big data, especially in our cases. Absolutely.
Most of our clients are trial lawyers, and most of our clients, not all, but most, don't want to do offline advertising. So what I would consider billboards, radio, commercials, because they think that they're serious lawyers and they don't want to be portrayed as like ambulance chasers and all this. And my rebuttal has always been, if what you say to me is that you want to help people, this is one way to help a lot more people. Sure, maybe some people are turned off by that, but I think it's still like a plus. I know that it is. And you guys actually do offline advertising.
We do. Mm-hmm.
So A, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But B, like, how did you get started with that?
Whenever Greg and I started practicing together, I mean, we were the new guys in town, right? We didn't have, parents that had a law firm. And so we were like, well, how are we going to compete with some of these other firms that have been around for a long time and they're more established and everything else? And get our names out there and brand. At that, 20 some years ago, we had no money, so we couldn't afford to be on television all the time. So, which is like, it's crazy to think of this. We were in the phone book, and we had they called it a double truck ad in the middle of the phone book. And then we had magnets on the front of the phone book because we figured out that we could distribute these magnets cheaper by being on the front of a phone book and then people just then sending out direct mail.
I've never heard of the magnets.
Magnets, yeah.
Ever.
And one of the funniest things now is I will go into like somewhere and, you see our magnets from like 15 years ago that are still like on somebody's.
And was it like the really flat ones that like Pizza Hut had?
Yeah, it was. It was.
This is like taking me back to like the 90s.
So yeah, it was like a little 3x3.
Do you have a picture?
I probably do have a picture.
If you can send it, we'll do a reel and we'll put it in the reel.
Oh, we still have magnets. That was how we started.
Did it work?
It worked tremendously because, people, we spent more money than we had, but we wanted to position ourselves with like the guys who were at that time more established. And
people loved magnets back then.
They absolutely did.
Because back then we didn't have the internet. So it's like you can't just go and Google something. So I remember we would have like the pizza magnets. Like that's like the first. Yeah. I'm aging myself.
No. I mean, it's true. And, the phone book, like that's where you went if you needed to find something. So
the Yellow Pages day. What was your cost per case back then?
Oh, geez. I don't know. Oh my gosh.
I'm sure it was low.
It was very low.
Now it's like absurd.
Yeah, it was very low. I'm gonna say it was probably like $45.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like really, it was really low. But I mean, I remember at the time, I think we were spending like $12,000 a year, like $1,000 a month on the phone book. And like, it was like, man, it's tough to write this check every month,
Dude, I bet you that there are some like older people that still have your magnet on their fridge.
There's no question. And we track everything. So last year we got 5 cases from our magnet.
No.
Swear to God.
Wow. Okay, wait. So who had this idea? Like, was this a thing that I've just never heard of?
Somebody had something on the phone book. It might not have been a magnet. It might have been like a sticker. And, Greg and I were like, well, geez, I wonder if you could do something a little bit more substantial. And I remember like the people who own the phone books, oh, yeah, you could do a magnet.
I love this so much because it literally changed everything. Like you took a risk.
Yeah, yes.
On a magnet.
Yes, on a magnet.
For $12,000 a year.
Yes, that we didn't have.
Right.
I think we actually had it on a line of credit. We were paying it for it on a line. But that's how we started. That was our sole source of advertising for many years.
And I assume also because it was positive, you felt open to advertising in different ways.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We then started to move into some billboards and television. And it was, I would say like billboards, I think there's the tacky billboards like you're talking about.
I didn't say that.
I cringe. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Okay, you know what the best ones are? In Florida, if you're driving from Miami to Orlando, there's like a Morgan & Morgan video, like the one where it's like size matters or whatever. And then the next one is like another firm and it's like, who would you rather have fighting for you? And it's like a hippo and then a lion.
Yeah.
Size doesn't matter. But the funniest part about it is that you can't see that billboard until you're super close to it.
I actually had a thought, because I mean, there are some really tacky advertisements in our business. I mean, you got the guy who like puts himself in a hot dog suit, or people dress up in, costumes or whatever, whatever it is. And I wanted to like do a video where you have like a police lineup and it's like, the guy in the hot dog suit and, the guy chasing the ambulance and like the guy who's in like some weird costume. And then like, me and my team standing there looking like actual lawyers and in like a, police lineup and say, if you have to make the biggest decision of your life for you and your family, who's going to walk into a courtroom with you? Who do you want? Do you want the hot dog or this guy in the weird costume, or the people that, are taking themselves and what they're doing a little bit more seriously and, taking the time to improve their craft and everything else? We advertise our services, but we also are trial lawyers. And there's other, men and women in our profession that they're just marketers. That's all they are. And they go out and they aggregate cases and then farm them out. And, there's a place for that as well.
But what do you say to the trial lawyers that don't want to advertise because they think it's beneath them?
I think there's an appropriate way to do it. And I think they have to leave themselves open to that possibility. For example, if we don't ever start out in the phone book and having a double-sided ad in the phone book, then and then moving to television, we never get the opportunity that we ended up having, which is dramatically change the complexion of our firm. We do a program on the nightly news called The Law and You. We're on WBRE. It's an NBC affiliate. It's in 22 counties. And we have a 3-minute segment where we answer viewer questions. It's myself and my partner, and we have a host. His name's Chris Bahinsky, who's with the station. And we answer everything from, my neighbor's tree fell into my garage. What do I do?
This is so old school. Like people submitting questions.
We still have a hotline.
No.
I swear to God.
Okay, what's the weirdest question you've gotten?
Well, there's been a number, but we had a person call, and so what happens is they'll call the hotline and then it'll get transcribed and then we'll answer it on the air. And so they called and they said, my daughter just drank chlorine, like the pool chemical, right? I want to sue the pool company for this. And when they had the time, so it was like within 2 hours, we're like, well, first of all, get your daughter to the hospital, right? The first call that you should not be making is to our office. So that was one of the strangest ones. Like, why are you thinking about calling us after your daughter drank?
And they don't really have a lawsuit, right?
Nothing. They have no lawsuit. The daughter may have a lawsuit against the parent for not, providing appropriate. No, it's not. But
I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, appropriate supervision there. But one of the strangest ones, we had a guy who it was like his 3rd or 4th DUI, and so he gets into this crash and. The officer comes up and he said, may I have your license and ID? And he said, officer, how about this? And he goes into his pocket and he pulls out a toothbrush and he hands the officer the toothbrush and he says, this is all you need in life. This is it. Just this toothbrush. And the officer's like, you're drunk. Where have you been? Where have you been drinking? And he's like, look, I don't want to tell you where I've been drinking. I don't want to get I don't want to get, somebody else in trouble. And the officer's like, oh, were you, had you been drinking at a bar? He's like, no, I wasn't drinking at the bar. And this was a rural police area. So it turns out that the guy was drinking at the local, fraternal order of police. They had a benefit. And this particular police officer, he was drinking with his boss at the time.
No.
Swear. And so now...
But don't you think he should have said something? Then they're like,
yes.
Okay, let me drive you home, buddy. And that's
all
the end of it.
Right? So now he's like, look, he's like, what should I do? Should I fight this? I'm like, fight this. This is your 4th DUI. You gave the officer a toothbrush. And he said, yeah, but the police provided me the alcohol. And, we're like, it doesn't matter who provided you the alcohol at the end of the day, although it is really, unfortunately, nobody was hurt in the case, but I can only imagine if somebody had actually gotten hurt, you would be suing the local fraternal order of the police for providing alcohol to somebody that got in a crash. It was really, really, really bizarre. But that was, he handed him a toothbrush. But that's the kind of stuff we do on The Law and You. And so, as trial lawyers, if we just had this singular mentality, which is, well, we're never going to do advertising. It's beneath us. We would have never gotten that opportunity, which we have had the very, very, very fortunate pleasure of getting tremendous amount of clients from this, and people, recognize us everywhere. So it's helped brand us very well. And it's an honest brand. It's not a stick. It ended up being tremendous. And we've been doing it now for 10 years. So that was some of the offline advertising initially. And then the 1 year, they were doing a promotion during prom and graduation season about texting and drinking and driving. And so we had this idea, we're like, well, what if we go and start talking to local high schools? Because about the dangers of drinking and driving during prom and graduation season. And right around that time, we were representing the family of a 15-year-old girl who was killed as a result of a crash with a 16-year-old boy who was unlicensed and speeding. And, it was right around prom and graduation season. And we started doing some studies that most of the crashes involving teenagers, I say most of, but there's a huge uptick from the months of May through July, because prom, graduation, senior weeks at, whatever beach or whatever it is.
And they're starting to feel like adults.
Right, exactly. They're going, leaving high school, going to college, all the above. So we came up with this idea to go and do a little like mini documentary, play a little mini documentary of a thing called the Mid-Valley 8, this happened in the 80s in Pennsylvania. There were 8 kids that were killed in a single car accident.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it hit a guide wire, flipped and landed on its roof. It's still to this day one of the worst single vehicle crashes in the history of the United States. We wanted to make it fun for the kids because it's a fun time of year for them. So we started going, and we would give away T-shirts and prizes and everything. And that was, roughly 10 years ago. Now we've spoken to almost 50,000 high school students in the last 10 years. And there hasn't been one, fatality in prom or graduation in any of the schools that we've gone to in the last 10 years.
Wow.
But my point is, like, that opportunity doesn't present itself if we were closed-minded to offline, advertising, because that kind of came about as being associated with the TV station. And now for the last 6 years, they've been our partner. Every time we go out, they come with us and they shoot a ton of video and they play it, they highlight it on the TV station all the time.
That's a great way to combine offline and grassroots.
We feel pretty good about it.
You should feel really good about it.
And the kids love it. And it's not, when I say the kids, like, they're young adults, but they're really...
No, they're kids. I'm sorry.
They're really, but they're smart kids, right? Most of them. But they're smart kids that just make very dumb decisions.
Well, they're still kids.
And we always say, look, you're going to make a bad decision, but just don't make the bad decision that will cost you, your friends, your family, somebody's life.
I'm calling you as soon as my kids start driving, just letting you know. I'm getting them on a plane. They're going to come visit you. You're going to do your thing. You're going to work your magic.
Happy to do it. And so then from there, that's kind of, grown into... We do a lot of lawyer-to-lawyer advertising, as well. I say advertising, networking, events, because a big portion of our business comes from that. And it's very important. It's a necessary evil in our business, and we do it, but we want to do it in a responsible way. I always say, I don't want, we have 4 kids, and I don't want my kids' friends to be like, oh, your dad's the guy in the hot dog suit or something like that. I'd rather them say, oh, we saw your dad on a billboard or whatever, just saw him on TV or whatever. That's fine. But now, fast forward 5 years, are they just picking up their phone and going to their, Chat GPT and saying, hey, do research across the country and find me the best trucking lawyer in the East Coast?
When it comes to YMYL, your money or your life, there are 3 categories: health, finance, and legal. In these 3 categories, Google calls it YMYL, and it scrutinizes them because it says we have to be really careful when it comes to these 3 things because they're everything, really, right? Starting with health.
Funniest thing is, politics is not in there.
It's not. It's not. We're not going to go there, but I don't know how much it's going to impact it. And then the other thing that we have to consider is that AI has to get its information from somewhere. So it can't just become only AI, because then it's not going to be true to us.
I couldn't agree more.
We evolve. Our attention span now compared to before, it's absurd. And then what do you think our kids are going to be like? My kids get bored with the TV show and they'll change it.
How many kids do you have?
3.
What are their ages?
They're 11, 9, and 5.
Oh, you're in it.
Yeah. I actually like this stage. 5 years ago, I was really in it. Now it feels like...
Boys, girls?
2 boys and then our little girl.
Okay.
Yeah,
very cool.
She's my favorite.
Yeah. My daughters are my favorite as well.
Yeah, of course. They're the best.
And they know it.
Yep.
And that's the problem. They absolutely unequivocally know it. Although I love all my kids equally, every one of them.
I don't know that but I don't tell them I love them equally. I tell them I can't love any of you like more than anything else. So it's like impossible for me to love one of you more than the other. I just love you for who you are.
You just like your daughter, but not.
I just like her better. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
I like her better.
Yeah. No, there's moments that we always laugh. We're like, when we talk to our kids, we're like, well, there's moments that we like Josh more than we like, and there's moments that we like you more.
But we always love you.
Yeah, and like
I tell them that all the time. I'm like, I love you even when I'm mad at you. And my daughter cannot wrap her head around that. She's like, no, you don't. You hate me. I'm like, you're 5 and I don't hate you.
That's funny. So the interesting question for you, Maria. So your 5-year-old, how now does she watch TV?
Pre-COVID, I was really strict on no devices unless it's a weekend.
Right.
And then when COVID hit, we moved a ton. We lived in Mexico. We moved around a ton. There were times where iPads just became like we needed them. And now we started homeschooling our kids because we moved again. So they're privately homeschooled. And now they only get devices when we travel. That's it.
So when, like, say your daughter wants to go watch her favorite program, does she go to a television or does she go to a device?
She would prefer a device, but I force now they're forced to go to the television. She goes to a device. And there was a moment in time when they were using YouTube. And I was like, we cut that out pretty quickly. We were like, absolutely not. And YouTube created a really big issue because it was just short and they would just go and click and like we could tell that their brains were being wired to have really short attention spans, which is why we were like, no more YouTube. And then eventually we were like, no more iPads. You have to go to the TV or they can play Nintendo and they only get 2 hours a day, Saturday and Sunday.
Well, that's great.
That's it. And they actually, ever since they became homeschooled, they started reading a ton, like absurd. And there was a Sunday that they forgot to watch TV.
That's
the
awesome.
The whole Sunday went, and they were so pissed when 9 o'clock came, and they were like, wait, we didn't watch TV. And I was like, I knew it. Like around 5, I was like, have they watched TV?
Like, I'm a success as a parent.
That's how I felt. And it was actually very quickly to undo the habit.
Yeah.
Like, it really was because I think they're still so young.
Yes.
But why the question?
Oh, so here, because I think that it directly affects advertising now, because I'm on the news every night, but that news is not on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Apple TV or any of these other platforms. So now one of the things that we've looked at is, well, we have all this great content and you have, we're in 22 counties in Pennsylvania and then a YouTube channel and everything else, but how now are you going to penetrate the subscriber market? Whether it's
have you done OTT?
I don't know if anybody has really figured it out completely yet. Well,
I don't think anybody has. I'm hopeful that somebody will.
One of the reasons I know I like to watch Netflix or Prime or Apple because there's no commercials, right?
But you know what I also think is interesting? Before we would like sit down and watch TV and there was no distraction. But now we're also sitting down and watching TV and we have our phones and we have social media. So to me, whenever I watch a show that still has commercials because it's whatever platform it is, I think it's Paramount, I just grab my phone. And this is like one of the things I say about social media is like, if you're going to have a social media account, you're going to do videos, you can't make them all about PI because nobody gives a shit. Make it about something else and then sprinkle it with, by the way, here's what I do, right?
It's so funny you say that. So during COVID, we're all bored out of our minds, right?
Yes. That's when Tiger King became all the rage.
So we're all bored out of our minds. And, in the beginning of COVID, we only thought this thing was going to last 2 weeks. So I'm home with my wife and my 2 daughters. Our 2 sons were not at home at that point. And so it's like, I'll just do stupid stuff at home, right? Shoot it and put it on our, and so like the one segment was like me juggling and answering a legal question. The stupid juggling video got like 25,000 views. And I'm like, that's insane. I'm like, I'm juggling for God's sakes. And then the other one, we did a card trick. That's like nonsensical stuff, like not legal stuff at all. They got so many views and so many downloads. Like people loved it, absolutely loved it. And I was at the grocery store a couple weeks ago, and a lady, she's like, "When are you going to juggle again on the, on the video?" I'm like,
You should do a live where you're juggling and see how long you can juggle for. How long can you juggle for?
I mean, I've never really timed myself a fair amount of time. So I learned how to juggle in college. This is a good story. So I had the greatest physics professor ever. His name was Dr. Roger Maxwell. And juggling, that's how we learned physics. So we learned what it takes, mass, force, throwing the ball up in the air, the ball descending, gravity, negative 9.8 meters per second squared. I still remember it to this day. And then our test was we had to explain the movement of the balls when you were juggling. And we had to practice juggling. And he would say, okay, well, if you hold one, what happens to the other two? And so it was pretty cool. We learned how to juggle, and we learned how to ride a unicycle during physics at Wilkes University. It was the coolest
contest where it's like whoever can guess how long I'm going to juggle for gets $100, and then you go live. You give them 5 minutes to give the answer, like their bet. And then whoever gets closest to it without going over gets $100. I think that will get you people to.
I like that. That's pretty cool.
I'm hired.
You're hired.
I don't do social though.
You're hired. But to your point, stuff like that, and we're always trying to do things that we're branding but not selling. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely makes sense.
We're always trying to figure out ways to be in people's sphere of what they're thinking about if they ever need a law firm, but not shoving stuff down people's
You don't do radio, right?
So we did a couple of radio spots.
And it didn't do anything?
It was okay.
Have you been tracking how many cases you get from TV year over year? And is it going down? It
was pretty steady up until COVID. And then at COVID, it just went through the roof, especially like medical malpractice. We saw, I think it was about 160% increase in medical malpractice calls, not cases, but calls during COVID. Correspondingly, a dip in calls about car accidents.
What about now?
We're spending a little bit more in terms of our buy with the TV station, but we're also becoming, I would say, a partner with them in stuff that they do.
Got it. So. And then when you do all these events, are you taking pictures and uploading them to your Google My Business or no?
I don't know, actually.
You really should. Yeah. We can talk about that.
Yeah. No, I'm not sure if they do that or not. I know that they're putting them all over social, but I'll give you like stuff that we're doing now. Like the TV station is going to partner with us. We're doing like a dog adoption day. People love dogs.
They do. I think Brian White just did this. One of our clients, I think, just did this. Yeah, Same thing.
So my wife is very involved. I laugh because we just had a foster. They call it foster fail. So yeah, we were fostering 2 Bernese Mountain Dog puppies, and one got adopted. Well, they both got adopted. One was by us, right? So foster fail. The fostering is the dog is supposed to leave your home.
Oh, my kids would cry. Like, my kids have been begging me for a dog. And I'm like, look, when you're 18, I'll get you a dog.
So we have 3. We have a German Shepherd.
Wow.
We have a Bernese Mountain Dog, and now another Bernese Mountain Dog.
But who cleans up after them?
Yeah, it's quite a chore. I don't. I mean,
that's the thing. Like, we refuse, and I think our 9 and 5-year-olds are too young.
They're a little too young.
And our 11-year-old I don't think he cares. So he doesn't want a dog that badly.
Well, then he's not going to be into it.
It's the 9-year-old that is
he's like,
he's dying. It would help him actually. I think it would be good for him. But we travel a lot. I'm like, when you're nice to your sister, I'll get you a dog. That's never going to happen.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you know what? That is what I'm going to tell them actually.
That's a good point. So wait, where did you move from Mexico back to the States, right?
Yeah. So we were in San Diego, and then when COVID hit and everything shut down, and we both work full time. So now we have 2 kids on Zoom. Our nanny went back to Mexico. So we had no nanny, 2 kids on Zoom. And getting a nanny was like a disaster. And we were paying like, at that time, like $25 an hour, and like we couldn't get anyone to stick. So we were like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just go to Mexico. So we went to Guadalajara, and we were kind of going back and forth at the time. But like my family's from there, which ended up being like the best thing we could have done because half of our employees are out of Mexico. So we were there for that component. And like we opened up a physical office while we were there, and we did all this stuff, right? And we hated Guadalajara, like with a passion. But we didn't want to give up on Mexico because of the taxes and because we had so much help. Like we had a chef. It was like some things about it were great. So we had a driver. It was like things about it were amazing, right? So we moved to Mexico City. And this I was like very like excited about and very like committed. And we went and we lasted 5 months. I was like, it's not, I wasn't the city. I like Mexico City a lot more than Guadalajara. It was just the country as a whole. And when you see what like the lack of an American dream or the idea of that dream does to a culture and how it seeps into things that you would never think that it would impact, it's like mind-boggling. And I'm like, you guys don't get how good we have it. Like for all the people that are like, and I get it. I get that things have, I'm not disagreeing that we've gone really far right and really far left. And I get all that. But we still have that ability. Like I'm the American dream. I'm an immigrant that was poor. Like so is my husband. Immigrant, same concept, right? So that was like really eye-opening. It gave us a lot of gratefulness, honestly. But then we went to Vegas. Because I have so many, hold on. We do so many conferences. And like they're most West Coast. There's a lot in Vegas. I mean, you have Mass Torts twice a year. There's a couple other ones. And we really wanted to make it work. But we hated it.
Yeah, I can't imagine living in Vegas.
So now we just moved to Miami and we love it. And we're going to buy a house and we're going to stay there.
That's great. What part of Miami?
Coral Gables.
Oh, Coral Gables is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's so pretty. And it was perfect because it was like we were used to like the Latin culture already because we had been so immersed in it. But like I have a Whole Foods, you know, and I can drive myself places. You can literally in 30 minutes have an LLC. In Mexico, you know how long it took us? A fucking year. How many times we were turned away from like the equivalent, like the IRS office there because, oh no, you need this and the next person, and it's arbitrary. So people tell you need one thing, other people tell you need something else. People just don't understand how good we have it. Is it perfect? No. But it's really, you know what it is? It's a good place to make money.
Now, is your husband in the same field?
We co-own Law Rank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Very,
so he went to UCLA Law and he started Law Rank while he was in law school. He never took the bar. He's never practiced.
Ah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
What made him?
It was like you know, when like the universe just like, I don't know, has like a plan. He was in law school and it was a second career for him. So I don't remember how old he was. He's 50 this year. So he must have been late 30s, early 40s. He like always says that he was the only one that would get the professor's jokes. Like he's like, I'm the only one that would laugh because he was so much older than everybody else.
Hey, let's go easy on 50. You know, I just turned 50.
I know.
So.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying what he said. But I mean,
I heard so much older. I'm like, oh, geez.
Well, he was older than the people there. I mean, he must have been what? 10 years
Oh,
older?
yeah, at least, yeah.
15. Yeah. And then like one of his best friends during law school was 21. So he was like the youngest and Marna was the oldest. But anyways, his brother who went to law school at the normal age that most people go to, left the DA's office. He was a prosecutor in LA and calls my husband and says, you're so techie, like, can you put up a website? Like, I'll pay you. And my husband, because he was in law school, was like, well, I can write content. Like, he just became fascinated by this idea of like, how does Google pick who to show? So the brother goes from like working out of a Starbucks to needing to like hire staff and an office like super quickly, starts paying my husband. He's like, you can't stop. Like, you know, my husband's in law school, but he's like so fascinated by this idea and eventually he was like, should I stop? Because he first started off part-time at USD and then transferred to UCLA. So there was like an extra year there. So like he didn't even want to finish. And I was like, you're finishing. Like, and there was always the idea of like, well, there could be a benefit because of if we wanted to do like a fee,
Sure.
but he's never taken the bar. So anyways, people started calling us. And then like one day we just looked at each other. We were like, okay, we need to like start a full-on agency.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. Meant to be, totally meant to be.
That is very cool. Now, how did you meet your husband?
Oh my goodness. He was my boss at AT&T. Hey, I'm supposed to interview you.
What did you do at AT&T?
So I was a manager at a store and he was a supervisor.
Okay. My wife worked for Verizon.
Really?
Yeah, before, I mean, many years ago, before she's now had 2 other careers since then.
You learn so, it was like the best schooling we could have gotten in terms of processes, customer service. Like
Angry
those,
customers.
yeah. Oh, you learn so much because if they can pull it off at that scale, like it's hard to pull it off when you have 10, 20, 30, 40 employees. You have how many?
I have
60, 70?
70 almost.
Yeah, that's tough. Imagine what they have to go through to pull the things off that, Yeah. It's just crazy.
No, I know. And we, we were talking before, like we've bought a couple law firms in the last year. And
oh, yes. Let's talk about that. So many firms are like, oh, I got to set up my law firm so that it can be sold. But then there's a lot of like, well, I don't really know if I can. So
this came about maybe about 7 years ago. We opened up an office in Philadelphia, and we did it from ground up. But we had no connection. I mean, we had connections in Philadelphia. We had some cases in Philadelphia, but we built it from the ground up. And it was a heavy lift. I mean, it really was to go into a new city, and we weren't going to, we purposely said, look, we're not going to just blow money on tons of advertising here. We want to build, we're in this for the long term and build this brand and make it sustainable. And so we did that. But again, it was a very arduous process and a lot of money. And so after that, we started, having people approach us, and they're like, well, would you take a look at my law firm? Because they saw that we had built this thing from the ground up, right? And we weren't interested at all. We were like, no, absolutely not. We're not buying anything else. We're not going into any other markets, nothing. So then, we started seeing kind of the world around us in terms of lawyers and their ages, right? So I'm 50, and
so young,
such a baby. But there's a huge portion of lawyers that are ages, I would say, like 65 to 75. They have no exit plan, and if they don't die in their office, like they're not retiring, they're not. So we had a lawyer approach us who was that age group bracket. And he's like, I can't do this anymore, right? I got a book of business. I want to spend more time with my wife. I want to spend more time, going to see my grandkids, and I can't do it. And so we said, look, well, let us take a look at your business. And I said, we have this tremendous CFO, Joe, who's very good at process. And what we saw was that, this guy had a really good book of business, but there was so much waste in his business. He was spending almost $200,000 a year on 3 people to do dictation.
What?
Yes, exactly. I know. It's like, so we worked out a deal. We said, okay, here, what do you want to do? Like, actually, what we said to him is, what don't you want to do? He's like, look, I don't want to run a firm anymore. I don't want any responsibility for hiring, firing, personnel, nothing. I don't want anything to do with it. Great. We'll take all. He's like, all I want to do is practice law. I will do whatever you tell me to do, and I want to practice law. And I want to make, X amount of dollars guaranteed over the course of the next couple of years. And then by the time I'm 70, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. But I still have built a name, and if a case comes in, I want to work out some deal where I can refer it and make some money. No problem. So that was the first firm that we did. And again, that was probably about 5 years ago.
And how profitable was it for you?
Immediate. Because it goes back to what I had said before. Most lawyers do not run their law firms like a business. And so when you look at a law firm that is spending $200,000 a year on something that we spend $0 a year on, it's $200,000 extra that goes to the bottom, right to the top line.
What was that firm's like ballpark in terms of figures, like gross revenue?
He was doing anywhere from about 1.5 net fees to about a little bit over $2 million each year. And
like fees, like his fees collected.
His fees, right.
And then profitability?
I would say that he was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about $700,000-800,000 a year. Maybe on a bad year, he might have been at 600. On a good year, he might have been at $1 million.
What's that in terms of profit? 30%?
Yeah, give or take.
30%?
Yeah, I think it was about 20%.
And is that, in your opinion, standard?
It should be much higher.
Really?
Yeah, it should be much higher.
Yeah,
so if you look at for every dollar that comes in, roughly 25% should go to overhead, right? And then we always say 25% should go towards the business. When I say the business, meaning reinvesting in the business to continue growth of the business.
So marketing,
advertising,
whatever. You hear that, guys?
Yeah, whatever
you can afford me.
Right, whatever that looks like for your particular firm. That might be different and then your remaining 40 to 50%, whatever that is, that should be getting to the partners in some form. It may be wages, it may be bonuses, it may be, whatever, however it is, employees, because if you are a lawyer in my firm, I'm paying you, but I'm also earning money off of your services. So
when you're talking about bonuses for employees, not salaries,
even salaries, because
that would fall in the 40 to 50.
Right. That it's all, you have to look at it in terms of like, all right, because I can't work on every case.
No. I agree. I just didn't know if the first 25% included employee salaries.
Yeah, I would say that health benefits, those types of things. So we look at
office, any tools.
Right. Those are some hard costs that are never going to go away. But that remaining 50%, and then you hope that of that, then, roughly 25 to 30% of that is going into the owner's pockets.
It's just pure profit, right?
Right. Pure profit.
So then how do you structure buying a firm? Because typically you would say, okay, if you're at $1 million net, I will buy you for $2 million or $3 million, whatever the EBITDA times whatever, right?
So forget the words EBITDA in terms of, it's in this world.
Because you're coming in as a partner,
not as a partner, as an employee. No. So all the firms that we've purchased, not one.
How many have you purchased?
This will be our fourth deal.
You're about to do a fourth.
Yeah, we're about to do a fourth. So we've done 3 in the last 5 years.
And are you looking to buy more?
Yeah, I think right now, because we're only licensed in Pennsylvania, we can only own in Pennsylvania right now. But we can partner with other, firms. And we actually did have somebody in South Carolina approach us.
But you're not an owner, so why would it matter?
It's a little tricky. So Pennsylvania rules of professional conduct are pretty strict. Any law firm that we have any interest in, we have to disclose. So our ethics lawyer is like, that's a little dicey. I don't know, because you're not licensed in South Carolina, if you said you were going to purchase a firm in South Carolina. So we're trying to figure it out. I don't know if from a business perspective, it's totally fine, but from the rules of professional responsibility, it's a little bit trickier. But the the firms that we've purchased, we don't go in and say, okay, you've done $1 million, you're going to get paid, that times whatever. We look at it more in terms of, you're at an age that either you want to have some better quality of life, or you don't. And if you don't, we're not the right fit.
But let's say somebody wants to completely step out of it. Will you also buy it or no?
No.
So basically what you're doing, you're not really fully buying it. You're just basically managing it.
We're buying it and we cash them out of their debt. So that's the other really attractive thing because
Wait, firms have debt?
Yeah, firms have debt.
Really?
Yes, yes.
How much debt? Like debt to handle the cases?
Yeah,
or like,
most of it in our business is lines of credit to fund cases.
well, I knew that, but is it significant?
Some of it can be very significant. I mean, the one firm that we purchased, it was multiple 7 or 6 figures. So.
But you know what's interesting? Like people are like, oh, PI lawyers, and they take a fee in this. Yeah, but they're absorbing all the risk.
Every penny of it, and that is.
It just seems like twisted.
We can't write that off on our taxes.
Right.
Carry it off year with year.
So you buy them out, but you're saying you're not looking at gross to determine how to pay them. How are you paying them?
So what we do is we go in, we look at their book, and because they're going to be coming with us, right? We structure the deal, however that looks for them. That's
like you get X percentage of profit for the into perpetuity type of thing. What if they die?
That's a very good question. So we've actually began that conversation because we brought in another lawyer who specializes in estates and trust work because we want to make sure that it's a very valid question, especially the people that we're talking to who are at that age, right? So what I think we're going to do is guarantee that there would be, let's just give an example, that we would sign a 5-year deal with the lawyer that we're buying their firm and say, okay, you're going to work for the next 5 years. We're going to pay you, just pick a number, $250,000 a year. Just make the math easy. They work first year, so they're paid that $250,000. There's 4 years left on that contract. They die. What happens to that $1 million, right? I think it would be disingenuous for us to just say to that person's family, you don't get anything, because we bought that firm because they had worked so hard and done a great job. So I think what we're going to do, if that happens, there would be some then type of payment structure to that person's family and to their estate. I just think it would be the only way it would be fair to do.
Because that's my first thought. Like if I were them, that would be my concern.
Yeah.
Well, if I die, what happens to my family? Because now I can't provide, but I don't own the firm anymore. But it makes so much sense because, so from the agency side, so many people build agencies to sell. So it's like a whole other world where this is talked about and it's like always EBITDA, or sometimes it can be actually off the gross. Sure. But when it comes to law firms, and like we see what's happened with John Morgan, where he tried to remove his face from the website, and like 2 months later, the face is back on there, and they're trying to make it about Morgan and Morgan, but it's been a difficult transition. It's fascinating to me as a business owner to think, okay, you build this whole thing, especially if you go and you advertise and you put all this money, time, and energy, but then at the end of the day, it's really tough to sell.
It's impossible to sell.
At 2 times, somebody said to me like, oh, like at best you'll get like 2 times EBITDA. I was like, that's awful. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that makes 0 sense to me.
It's impossible. I mean, the firms that we've purchased, and there's no market, right? So there's no open market for that. And what are they going to do? Somebody's going to come in and say, well, I don't think your case is worth that much. Your cases are worth that much. So now you say, well, yeah, but I've been doing $1 million a year for the last 5 years. Great. Then I'll pay you $1 million. Wait, my firm is worth more than $1 million. Well, we don't think it is.
And it's tough because instead of going and buying a firm is going to think, well, I could just take the $1 million I'm going to give you and like build my brand, and your brand without you has no brand. So it just gets really complicated. I understand why. I get it.
We've looked for firms or people in other geographic areas because we're like, look, if we're going to expand over Pennsylvania geographically, we're not ever going to do what we did in Philadelphia again.
But wait, do you rebrand? So when you take over these firms, do you rebrand? And then do you start like pumping the market, kind of like a la Morgan?
A little bit. So, but the rebranding is a little bit different because these people have built a brand. So what we do is we come in and support them. So most of them have never done offline or online advertising. So what we'll do is then put dollars behind them.
But it's your brand now. So they become kind of absorbed into your brand. I love this.
The other thing we do is we do tons of community advertising in their community. So now, and it's not myself, I don't go there. My partner doesn't go there. It's,
the lawyer.
It's Rudy going and handing out our swag and say, hey, I'm with Ed Ciarimboli now. Here's what we do.
Do you roll them? And I'm sorry, I have so many questions. We could literally do a whole episode on my questions. Nobody would listen, except me probably. Do you roll them into your website?
We do.
And then do you redirect their website to your website?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you change their GMB to your name?
They will eventually, and the only reason I say eventually is because of the reason I pause is because of the escrow accounts. So lawyers have the IOLTA accounts. You have to have a corporation, a legal corporation attached to an IOLTA account. So like to the firms, there are still money in the IOLTA accounts. So we can't formally close that corporation until that's all done. So that'll be a year process or whatever it is.
But you could still change the Google My Business listing to your brand.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Because that's a way to generate cases right there.
I'm hoping my marketing people are doing that. So yeah, but I don't know the answer to that. But that's, one of the things that has kind of fueled some of our geographic growth over the past couple of years.
You're solving a problem at the end of the day.
Yes. And that's the thing. We looked around and we talked to enough lawyers of that age group to realize that the overwhelming majority of them have absolutely no exit strategy. Zero.
It's just, again, it's tough because they're not really built for it. And most businesses are.
Right.
I guess, no, not really. But a lot of businesses are.
The fourth firm that we're looking at, this guy has had the same paralegal for 40 years.
I love that though.
And she's like, I'm done. Right? No, his practice is a very paralegal driven practice. So now if you've been working with the same person for 40 years and he doesn't even have a case management system.
Oh my God. I whenever somebody says to me, I'm like, right. So what's your case management system?
So we're transitioning to FileVine. We were with TrialWorks for a long time.
I knew you were gonna say that.
And now we're transitioning to FileVine. And honestly, like none of them are perfect, but we think that FileVine right now is going to be the best fit for us.
Are you using LeadDocket with it?
Not yet, because we haven't fully transitioned. Yeah. So I think our transition date is like early January.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah. And that's fascinating as well. Like we hired a human being
outside of FileVine.
Of FileVine, Tom, who is this is what he does. It's like crazy. I'm like, it doesn't even make sense to me. Like, so we have a FileVine consultant, and then Tom.
You need to bring an outside person.
Yeah, so it's really, 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 it's pretty cool. But that's, we're transitioning to that, and that's also, a little bit complicated, like assimilating their old systems into our system. So it's taking a little bit of time, but
it sounds like it's working out.
It's getting there. It's not perfect yet, but it's getting there. And when you ask about profitability, we look at it, and I could tell you. I've looked at enough of these deals now. I could tell you, this guy has a good book of business, and we could do this for him, and we'll make money. We'll be profitable in 6 months on his book of business, or his book is bullshit, and these are crap cases, and he's got way too much money out on the street.
And this is all word of mouth. Like people are contacting you word of mouth, or you don't have like
nothing, all word of mouth.
We didn't even get to talk about your book. Next time.
Yes, we'll talk about the book. Yeah.
Once the book comes out, I have to have you back.
There you go. That'll be when the book comes out. Yes, that's a big win.
It'll be a book on what?
So we're myself and Philip Miller. We're going to be writing the next volume 2, the Advanced Deposition book, and it's a big honor. Philip and this guy, Paul Scopter, wrote it. The first one, Paul was one of my mentors. He passed away a number of years ago. And so Philip and I decided to, because so much has happened in the world of depositions over the last 5 years and the approach to them and using visuals.
I can't wait. You let me know. You'll come back on.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
This was fun. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everything Ed shared with us today. If you found this story valuable, please share it with someone you want to see succeed. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. And leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to help others discover the show.